So Danielle and I were here having a conversation about critical thinking, and she wanted to play a TED Talk this week, which I thought would overstimulate and simultaneously bore you to death. So instead, I'm sorry, Danielle.
I know, I loved it though. That was a great one.
If you want to see it, come see Danielle. She'll hook you up. So in the meantime, though, we thought it might be helpful to give you our different perspectives about critical thinking, and sort of interestingly, how us having difficult perspectives about critical thinking is sort of evidence of critical thinking itself. So while Danielle begins to talk, I'm going to go let my son in the door who's knocking.
Okay, awesome. Ooh. So here's how I think about critical thinking. I think that if you were, say, up at the Rattlesnake and you picked up a stone out of the water and you looked at the front part of that stone, you might see one thing, right? I mean, you would see different colors and you would be wet and you could tell what kind of rocks were there. But if you flipped it over, you might see bugs and eggs of bugs. And so as you continue to turn this item over and around in your hand, you'd get different views and perspectives. And then if you kind of widen the camera lens and you said, okay, so this rock came out of a stream, and from the stream, the context, I can tell all sorts of things. I can tell what kind of winter it's been or what kind of summer it is, and you can constantly keep going to different levels and layers of knowledge about the same topic. I guess when I think of critical thinking in terms of practice, that's what I think of. When you're dealing with a client, rather than just sort of seeing what's on the surface or what's being presented, it's constantly inquiring about more and more depths of knowledge or pieces of information that might feed what you see on the surface. Does that about cover it?
Yeah, no, I think that fits a lot. One way that I can always phrase critical thinking, and I have on my special, I don't know if you can see it, but this is an owl pin, because I think part of being a good critical thinker is thinking like an owl, and having sort of that insight that we all, and that wisdom that we associate with owl thinking, which is never just taking what happens or what says or what is experienced at a surface level, but it's always thinking deeper about what are the reasons. So whenever you find yourself in practice, and you might just challenge yourself this week, when you're in practice and you feel like you're working with someone or in some situation and you think you have the answer. So a family might be struggling because they don't have parenting skills, and sort of letting that be the beginning and the end of your work. Think about asking yourself why. Why did the parents not have parenting skills? Well, it could be because they haven't had exposure, because they struggle with the effects of living in poverty. And then you can ask yourself questions about, well, why do they live in poverty? And then that just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper. So rather than just coming up with sort of the easy answers, it's like Danielle was saying before, it's really asking those bigger questions of just take yourself back, even with any situation you're working on, to 6 or 7 or 8 whys, and you'll begin to see what that deeper level of thinking, and when you have that broader understanding, like an owl does of thinking, when you take that back up into your work with these people, it really impacts the way that you see it, the way that you look at assessment, the way that you form interventions. And so it's really important as social workers that we always are engaged in a process of thinking critically, not just when we're in school, but perhaps even more importantly when we're in practice.
So I guess with that also, we were talking earlier that ties together critical thinking, contexts of practice, sometimes ethics, what else? Sometimes theory.
And research.
So as you think about critical thinking this week, I guess we'd invite you to think about all of those things as unified constructs rather than just one thing, and to think how is that impacting you this week in your practicum.
Tell us, what are your thoughts about critical thinking, and how do you conceptualize the idea of being engaged in critical thought, so we can add to this this sort of critical thinking that we have going here.
It's so good. We could go on forever, but I think we'll stop now and give you a chance.